Hi, Sam.
Hi.
How are you
How you
tonight?
doing?
Good, good. My name's Cameron. I'll just type that.
Hi, Cameron. Good to connect.
Good to connect too. How are you doing? I guess you're in the UK by the sound of your accent.
Yes. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Great, great. So let me check. We just had lunch, so I'm getting back into it just a moment. I'm glad that
Cool.
we have like 12 minutes. So
No worries. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, actually, is my like head okay in terms of positioning?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. I'm just wondering because like my laptop screen, it's like got a little fold out thing, so it's kind of arched back a bit. I'm
Right,
just if that, I mean, that is horizontal directly, but that's
right.
maybe that's
No,
cutting my
you're
head.
complete. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this
So
is
is that
fine.
okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Not to worry,
Okay.
not to worry.
Nice.
Okay, so Ecodelics, we're waiting for, seems to be a mistake here. So, could you quick, are you moderating or are you talking?
I'm talking. So I'm talking, and then I'm doing a panel after the talk as
Right,
well.
right,
So I think
right.
first.
Okay, and then are you with
David.
David Luke?
Yes.
Right, right, okay, okay.
I've got my what have I done here? Didn't say. I've got my presentation kind of ready to go.
That's good, that's great. Okay, Angela's joining us as well, I see. Oh, she'll be moderating.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yeah. That
that's
rings
very
a
good,
bell.
that's very good. So be you with David Luke and Alexander Irvine and Angela. Okay, great. That's good. Angela's part of our team, so she'll also know how everything goes.
Nice.
Have you seen any of our other events, or have you had the time to check out?
No, you know what? I actually haven't. It's a bit bad, but I came back yesterday from somewhere with no Wi-Fi and very dodgy phone signal. And today's been quite full on. It's my partner's kind of birthday weekend. So
Right.
juggling seeing friends.
Mm-hmm.
She's actually talking right now at this conference at exactly the same time. So we've
Really?
been trying to coordinate where we're speaking for Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
We've got to entertain her daughter and friends and stuff. So yeah.
Oh,
But I hope to.
Fill on.
Is it being recorded? Are the talks being recorded?
Yes, they will be reported. So
Fantastic.
so if you don't have time this weekend, you can watch everything up to a few months afterwards. So that should be totally fine.
Oh, fantastic. That's really, because there are definitely some talks I'd very much like to.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff going on. I see Angela joined us. It's
Hi,
great.
Angela.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. So you're moderating then? You're sort of.
I'm going to be just moderating really the questions that come in and the Q&A, making sure that we stay on time, giving you guys the questions that come in throughout the presentations, and we'll obviously do that after your guys' presentations.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Likewise.
So am I going first and then David? Is that the order or?
I think that's up to you guys. I don't know.
Okay.
We can really, I don't know, Cameron, if there was already a flow for that.
I think there was an email sent out about it. Unfortunately, the program direction on this one is quite a bit less detailed. So I don't know the exact order.
Sam, if you think that one presentation fits better going first,
oh wait,
well,
you can definitely just go with what you.
I don't want to like blow my own trumpet, but I think I kind of my talk will kind of lay the playing field, and then David's kind of talking more about the mechanisms of play that underpin the research I'm talking about. So I think it makes sense for me to go first and for David to follow on from that, I think.
Okay.
Perfect. Let's do that.
Cool.
Let me check.
I just hopped out of the after talk with Wade Davis.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
How'd you like it? Yeah.
I mean, this man, every time he talks, I'm like, wow, I love you.
Yeah.
He is a really interesting man.
He's a powerful speaker.
No, that's one I'd definitely like to see. Actually, he headlined, I think, it was the ayahuasca conference in maybe in Spain or somewhere.
He did at the ICERS conference.
Really good. Oh, yeah. I see. Well, yes, I think in Spain, or was it Ibiza? It's one of them. I kind of lose track.
It was in Spain.
Yes, that was amazing conference.
Yeah, shoot, I forget the name of exactly where it was being held, but yeah.
Yeah. I've also forgotten, but no, that was really cool.
Starts with a G. I don't know.
Yeah, Girona.
Girona. There you go.
Yeah.
Girona. Yeah.
Quick question, Sam. How long were you planning on speaking for?
I mean, I'm trying 15 minutes. I'm shooting for.
Great.
That's cool.
Sure. That's perfect. We have 45 minutes, so yeah, 15 for the Q&A.
Okay.
Do you want any help from us with the timing? Do you want me to send you a message at 3 minutes before time, or are you just going to keep an eye on the time yourself?
I'm going to keep an eye on the time. It might be good maybe to do just a 5 minute, or no, like a 3 minute thing, just so I'm sort of aware.
Sure.
I'm going to keep an eye on it and try and wrap it up at that.
Okay. Sure. Do you want me to send you I can do a buzzer, so you hear like a bell chime, or do you want me to send a message of 3 minutes to go?
Yeah. Will everyone else hear the bell chime?
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Yeah. yeah. No.
Really?
It's like a bell chime.
Like meditation, don't they? To like make sure you're still focusing and stuff.
Exactly. It's a very relaxed
thing.
bell.
I think the Zen Buddhists do that. Cool. Okay, I'm going to go for the relaxed bell. You've sold it to me.
Okay. We'll do that. 3 minutes in advance, I'll do that. Great to see you here, David.
Hi, David. Oh. Frozen in time.
Oh, I think you may froze on us.
Good connection here. I'm watching cartoons. I'm going to go and close me out.
David, I'm not sure if maybe you can try to turn your Wi-Fi off and back on, because the connection, you're completely frozen on the screen, and then when you speak, it comes in pieces. Oh, he's disappeared.
The good news is we do have David's and Alex's presentation pre-recorded, so worst case scenario, we could just play that and then they could be there for the Q&A.
Cool.
So we'll just ask whatever they're most comfortable with if they don't think the Wi-Fi is going to hold out.
Okay. Also, Cameron, a quick question for you on my end.
Mm-hmm.
The questions, I'll be able to just see them in this Q&A in the Zoom, in the Zoom call, right? And then I can use that. Yeah.
So what you open the conversation as moderator, and then you ask everyone to use exclusively the Q&A and the chat within Zoom. All the questions should go into the Q&A. Left bottom, you hit that button. You can ask your questions, and those are the ones you should read out, and then we have them all centralized.
Okay, I've clicked it now, but it tells me no open questions, and there's nowhere for me to actually like open a chat in there.
Okay, yeah, I think it's only for participants.
Ah, got it. Okay.
They can answer questions. And a quick question, Sam, and I'll ask David and Alex in a moment. Are you guys available for an after talk? So just like a 15-minute talk with people who might have specific questions at the end?
Yep. Definitely.
Sure. Then I'll make a link for that, and then at the end, Angela, you can let them know. They can speak to Sam and hopefully David and Alex as well afterwards, briefly in the community room in Hoofa.
Oh right, okay. So does that mean after the
That'll be an additional
40 minutes?
Hour.
Okay, no, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would be essentially the same thing as like when you come off stage and people bombard you after your presentation.
Yes. In an online format. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, I'm up for that.
Cool. Just hope David is doing well over there. Good news that we have the pre-recorder. That's definitely
Yeah.
it's definitely a save.
Yeah. Oh, he's back.
Hey.
There we go.
My connection's really bad because the kids are watching upstairs, so I've got to find a plan B. So don't worry.
Okay.
I'll be back in a minute. Sam, you go for it.
You sound a lot better now. The video is still a little stagnant, but
he's frozen in time again. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he did freeze in time. Yeah. Cool. Well, you're going first anyway, Sam. So
yeah, and David, what we could potentially do if the network doesn't work, we could always just stream your pre-recorded talk.
Just for the Q&A as much as anything. Also, Alex should be in this meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, Alex isn't here yet.
Actually, it's working right now, so we can keep our fingers crossed. But
yeah, but it's pretty jumpy. You're all kind of like jack.
Yeah.
Hey, what's your
It's saying your bandwidth is low, Cameron, by the way.
Is it?
Just FYI, yeah.
Okay.
On my end, anyway, it's saying your bandwidth is low.
Okay. Yeah, it's crazy. We have like 4 computers up here, and we should have the fastest internet, but we're like 4 Zoom calls going. It's quite intensive, actually. We thought it would be a bit smoother to run this online conference, but unfortunately, it's.
No, I can fully sympathize.
Yeah. No, but good that you say it. Then definitely keep an eye on that. Okay, we should go live soon. It's just waiting for David and Alex to join.
And if anything, Cameron, we can always go live and just let people know that David is figuring out connection.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Because we don't want to really waste time. So if you want, we could just start now, and then based on whoever comes on, we'll just go with it live. Yeah? Should we do that? Okay.
Cool.
So we're going live. Should we let David know that we're going live? Don't know if he's here yet. But okay, we'll just go live in 3, 2, 1.
So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ecodelics talk with Sam and David. We are going to go ahead and start with Sam with your live presentation. And then we will move on to David. And after that, we'll have a 15-minute Q&A with the both of them. So Sam, I give it away to you.
Cool, thank you. So let's just get my presentation up. Okay, how do I do the old? Okay, there we go. From beginning. Okay. Yeah, great to be here on the mycelial interwebs, and I'm going to talk about the potential of psychedelics to connect us to nature, and the sort of potential implications that has. So just to quickly define what I mean when I say nature connectedness, also known as nature relatedness in the literature. So this is a measure of experiential oneness with the natural world, or self-identification with nature, the amount you perceive yourself to be part of nature. And it's associated with many different measures of psychological health and well-being. So life satisfaction, vitality, lower anxiety, and many different measures of well-being. It also strongly predicts propensity to spending time in nature as well. And nature contact or immersion is associated with an even broader range of positive health effects. It's also a mediator of some of the benefits one obtains from spending time in nature. So attentional capacity, self-growth and development from spending time in nature. It predicts a propensity to experience awe and have transcendental experiences in nature, life satisfaction, and also, interestingly, people who rate higher in nature connectedness show more intrinsic over extrinsic valuation preferences. So things like community, self-growth and development over things like the pursuit of fame, money, and social status. Also, importantly, nature connectedness is perhaps the single strongest predictor of pro-environmental behavior. So there's been a few different studies, retrospective and prospective, and there's a few retrospective studies have shown that there's a strong effect of total lifetime use of classical psychedelics and people's nature relatedness at baseline. There's also been a few prospective studies that have shown that the experiences with psilocybin can catalyze enduring, sustained increases in both nature connectedness and also people's relationship to nature and the wider environment. And interestingly, these effects are sustained for at least a year, up to 2 years in research I was part of. So it seems to be an enduring shift. And an important and very interesting thing to note here is that this increase in nature connectedness that can come about can occur in clinical settings deprived or lacking in nature content. And this is something really interesting and mysterious. Having delved deeply into the literature on nature connectedness, increases always come about through engaging directly, sensorially or emotionally with nature. And so the fact that you can give people a dose of this substance in an otherwise nature-lacking environment and it facilitates this long-term increase is really unusual and interesting. It's important to note as well, this increase in nature connectedness is occurring via an independent pathway to other potential benefits of psychedelic use, such as psychological insight. So this is a slide from a talk by Taylor Lyons, who's also talking at this conference. And she looked at sort of the long-term brain effects and psychological effects of psilocybin in healthy psychedelic naive volunteers. And there was this very strong increase in connectedness to nature, but it was happening by its own independent pathway than psychological insight. So this suggests that it could be by maximizing it, we can reap extra important psychological benefits to psychedelic use that beyond mere sort of just the insight alone. So a few of the studies that have been conducted so far, both again prospectively and retrospectively, have found that ego dissolution is a sort of positive predictor of increases in nature relatedness. So the feeling under a high dose of psychedelic that your ego or self-referential, self-subjective sense of self-identity kind of dissolves and breaks down, and the boundaries between what you perceive to be your individual self and the wider world or universe break down, and that can facilitate this expanded perception of self, other, or self-nature overlap, and that seems to leave an indelible mark or memory in people's mind that then informs their perspective from then on. Also, there was an interesting prospective study looking at first-time psychedelic users, and it found that of all the long-term effects elicited by a psychedelic-induced mystical experience, enduring shifts, positive shifts in people's relationship to nature was one of the most common effects reported. And it's worth noting that, mystical experience is being identified in many different studies as a really important mediator of the long-term effects, beneficial effects of psychedelics. And we know from the research that nature-based settings are prone to eliciting mystical type experiences. Psychedelics, such as psilocybin, also increase measures of personality trait openness. And it should be noted that openness of all the big 5 personality traits. It's one of the primary personality traits that's correlated with nature connectedness. Ayahuasca users have been found to rate more highly in this sort of trait of self-transcendence, the feeling of transcending the individual self and sort of taking on much broader cosmic and potentially spiritual sort of concepts. And yeah, this is itself related to openness and is a significant positive predictor of both connectedness and environmental concern. Another important quality that psychedelics have is they seem able to increase measures of mindfulness related capacities, and this is outside of a mindfulness meditation practice as well. And mindfulness and nature connectedness are strongly linked. They have a reciprocal reinforcing relationship. So if you increase one, you tend to increase the other. This is some research I was involved in for the Center of Psychedelic Research at Imperial College, and we found a few different things. So we had a prospective survey design where we assessed people prior to their psychedelic experience, and then sort of did a snapshot of 2 and 4 weeks, and then 2 years later. So kind of a long-term follow-up. And we found a few interesting things. We found a very, very strong and clear relationship of past lifetime use of classical psychedelics and people's nature relatedness at baseline. We also found that for psychedelic naive people who had never had a psychedelics experience before, even after a single use, there was a measurable significant increase in people's nature relatedness. We also found that nature relatedness increases were correlated strongly with increases in well-being. And it's important to note as well that of the sort of mechanisms or predictors of increased nature relatedness, access to natural environments and the perceived importance of said environments, coupled with ego dissolution, echoing previous research, were both found to positively predict increases in nature relatedness. And yeah, this is just a few examples here of how this might be experienced during a psychedelic trip. So before I enjoyed nature, now I feel part of it. Before I was looking at it as a thing, like TV or a painting. You're part of it. There's no separation or distinction. You are it. I felt like sunshine twinkling through leaves. I was nature. It's interesting to note there are a number of overlapping and potentially synergistic mechanisms, both neurobiological and psychological, shared by psychedelics and contact with nature. Both psychedelics, such as psilocybin and nature contact, decrease rumination in the default mode network of the brain. They also increase the functional connectivity of the brain. Both psychedelics and nature elicit awe. Awe is a very important shared and central mechanism underlying the positive effects of both. Contact with nature increases connectedness in a broad sense. So increased acknowledgement of nature increases connection, not just to nature itself, but self and others. And we see this too with psychedelics. So they do facilitate this increase in nature connectedness, but also this broader level connectedness increase as well to self and others and the world at large. Given what I've said before about nature connectedness increases occurring through an independent pathway than the psychological insights psychedelics can confer, it would seem to me that we're really missing a trick by not maximizing the potential of people to expand and increase their connection to nature, given all the associated psychological benefits of this. And right at this time, it's not really feasible perhaps to take people out of the clinic into nature to have these experiences. So if we can't do that, let's bring nature into the clinic. And I feel that given how limited therapeutic psychedelics are at this point in time for people, there is tremendous capacity for using psychedelics for people to form a meaningful connection to nature. And this is really interesting and important because by doing so, you can link people to nature, to the environment, and in that way it can act as a space for them to self-soothe and be restored. And this is something that's also noted with the benefits of outdoor therapy. When you do outdoor therapy, it helps establish this meaningful connection to nature, and then people have this health buffering, promoting resource that they can then call on. So we can bring more nature into the clinic. We can do things like Shinrin-yoku, which is Japanese forest braving, which is an active mindfulness practice in nature. So we can do that, and we can hold integration sessions in nature and help consolidate any feelings of nature connectedness that have come up in a session. We can do horticultural exercises. There's a lot of increasing evidence body to show that, yeah, doing gardening and horticultural therapy is becoming its own thing. So we can kind of incorporate various different nature-centric practices, both before, during, and after people's psychedelic experiences to maximize this connectedness. It's also worth noting that nature contact itself, which is strongly predicted by high levels of nature connectedness, is tremendously underutilized as a health promoting resource at this time. We should also note that we're in the midst of both a burgeoning mental health crisis and a global environmental crisis. And I feel that by increasing people's connection to nature, I'm not saying we can solve all the mental health crisis, but it can certainly play an important role. I feel like our growing disconnect from nature is fueling the mental health crisis, and it's a key driver between the global environmental crisis we face. So psychedelics used well could potentially be very helpful here. Thank you very much. What's going on here?
Thank you very much, Sam. I think Angela will present next.
Yeah, here we go. So David, thanks. Actually, Sam, thank you for that presentation. We already have some questions for you on that, so we'll definitely address that in the Q&A.
Cool, thank you.
Now, Dr. David, we'll pass it over to you for your presentation.
I think I just need to be able to share my screen, if that's permissible. Is that working? You see my screen?
We see your screen.
Okay.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Nice to be here. Hello, ICPR, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Great to have an international conference everywhere at the same time. Okay, so we don't have much time. I'm going to talk about transpersonal things, add some more flesh as well. I'm going to primarily collected to the Breaking Convention conference in the UK. The first one was actually 5 years ago, a report ago, at the ICPR. We had 150 respondents. We looked at interaction with nature, following their psychedelic experiences. So how much people felt their psychedelic experience had changed their kind of eco-consciousness or biophilia, nature-relatedness. There was actually an increase in people's interactions with nature. So about 2/3 of people felt they interacted more with nature as a result of taking psychedelic. About a third were the same.
Excuse me, David. David?
Here we go.
The connection seems to be
yes.
being cut a lot.
Yes, so sorry to interrupt for that, but we're getting messages from everybody that it's pretty.
It's choppy.
The connection is very choppy. So
okay, I tell you what, we'll let Alex take over from here then, because he's got most of the presentation. Alex, if you're ready, if I stop sharing, Alex can take over from here. My internet connection is pretty dire, it seems. I'll try and sort that out. Alex, you go for it. I'll be back.
Alex, you're actually on mute,
Alex,
so we can't hear you.
I'll try again. Sorry about that.
There we go. Perfect.
Right. Yeah, I'll take over from Dave. He was about to kind of go through Ecodelics survey that he undertook in 2016. And this is really kind of follow on from that. So I'll try and do as part of the talk as much justice as possible. In as much as this research was similar, there were some unanswered questions from the initial research that Dave undertook. There was a lot of information about transpersonal aspects, and we've tried to kind of incorporate some of that in as well. So I'm not very well prepared for this, but I will try. I was kind of waiting for my cue here. Our population, our sample was actually also gleaned from Breaking Convention a few years subsequent, as well as some social media, some Facebook psychedelic user groups. It was a mixed methods approach we undertook. The sample was 339 participants, of which 288 completed the qualitative aspects of this study. Sorry, quantitative aspects of the study. 272 completed the qualitative aspects, which is about an 80% conversion rate, completion rate. The mean age was about 37, and all but one of our participants responded that they'd tried our drugs listed here at least more than once. 85% of them had psilocybin more than once, and it was only slightly lower for LSD and MDMA. So quite an experienced cohort we'd found. This graph here, kind of, the idea is that the width of the bubble represents the number of responses indicating specific drug use. So if you look at ibogaine, there's a large blob down at never, and nothing kind of higher up with extensively excessive use. And counter to that, cannabis is, as you can see, one of the more popular drugs that was mentioned by our sample. Jumping forward to a qualitative aspect that kind of linked in with drug use as well. Psilocybin was mentioned. Dave would have actually probably mentioned this in his study, but he hasn't given you the information. Psilocybin was actually reported as one of the most important psychedelic drugs linked with eco-conscious, increases in eco-conscious behavior. And that was similar in our study by quite a long shot. Interestingly, DMT was actually the fourth most cited psychedelic as contributing to eco-conscious behavior, which is unusual given that the kind of phenomenological aspects of inhaled DMT seem to not be very normal, not very natural, quite non-terrestrial. So I think that would be an interesting thing to kind of look at in greater detail at some point. So one example of one of our participants that stated DMT increased their connection to nature. DMT sent me into an extremely artificial and alien universe, far removed from what I considered natural. Human beings are like some kind of conduit between the natural world of living organisms and this alien realm of technology and artificial constructs. So quite an unusual route to increased eco-consciousness. I think you'll agree, but interesting nonetheless. We also had some quantitative aspects in our study. We included the nature relatedness scale 21, similar to Kettner and Gandhi study that Sam was mentioning earlier. That's not what's in front of you now, but our means were comparable to the high psychedelic drug using group that Sam and those guys reported. Our mean was about 4.3, and I think yours was about 4.45 or something, but considerably higher than Nesbitt's original normative population scores, which are hovering around 3.8 to 3.7, so somewhere around there. Our participants also completed the inclusion in nature, inclusion of nature in self scale, which you can see here. Participants had to choose one of these options to kind of describe how they see their self and nature physically separated or together. Shaded area here kind of indicates the range of responses we got from our sample, and our mean was kind of a little bit closer to the overlapping circles here. It is a single measure, so it's maybe not perhaps the most insightful measure, but it was quite interesting to have an idea of a physical space representation from our sample as well. So where are we? Here we are. Okay, so we undertook a thematic analysis of the open-ended questions to our qualitative data. And we really started by looking at what was psychedelic related to increase in eco-consciousness and what was non-psychedelic. Our sample professed quite to a high level existing connection with nature, something that was kind of mentioned a lot in, with psychedelics, but commonly without as well. This kind of blend of psychedelic use and existing connection to nature suggested a route to increased eco-consciousness that was by which psychedelics were amplifying this connection to nature. And then there was also instances of this kind of psychedelics as a revealer, which psychedelics establishing a connection out with an existing connection, or at least an explicitly stated one in our respondents. And then transpersonal as an idea that it kind of feeds into amplifier and revealer. Sorry, psychedelics as an amplifier, psychedelics as a revealer. It also has its own kind of method for increasing eco-consciousness, which I hope we have time to get to in a minute. Just an idea of how we kind of, how we decided what was going where. I experienced the defrag, restore to factory settings, and a download of new software indicates a kind of establishing of a connection where potentially there wasn't one before. So that would have been classed as revealer. And I'm gonna have to do this again. It's not just psychedelics that make me think about the environment, they enhance my connection to nature. So something like that really indicates that there's an amplification of a pre-existing connection to nature. Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble moving my things around. So as I mentioned before, our sample indicated that we're quite involved with nature ahead of being kind of relating it to psychedelics. A quote like this: "My upbringing in a city where an amazing park sparked my love of being in nature, climbing trees, playing in rivers, and roaming free and slightly wild." This kind of immersion in nature was quite a common theme. About 49% of our respondents cited some experience of nature, immersion in nature through camping or hiking. And a large proportion of people were actually, their upbringing was kind of referenced. So growing up on a farm, growing up in the countryside, very common. But here's an example where being in a city and finding nature, seeking nature out can have a substantial kind of effect as well. And this is kind of going into the amplifier, the psychedelics as an amplifier idea. Psychedelics have enhanced personality that already felt much affinity with nature. So this kind of idea that psychedelics are really allowing increased development of connection with nature. Some adjectives that kind of help describe how we got to an amplifier as an idea: cemented, enhanced, deeper and deeper, and increased. This is a very common idea through our data that was, it was really self-evident that a lot of people were kind of finding it to be an enhancer, an amplifier. Use of psychedelics in nature was something that came up within that as a sub-theme. People quoting psychedelic use in nature as kind of intrinsic to experience. As a young person, psychedelic use was mostly in nature, gave me a sense of nature appreciation, wonder, connection, awe, and a sense of belonging and unity. So quite an intense kind of connection directly with nature, but under the influence of psychedelics. And a smaller sub-theme within that was the idea that problematic or difficult psychological situations through psychedelic use, through a bad trip, were actually able to be undone through being in nature during those times when I felt it was too much for me. I've always used the outdoors and nature to get me through them. So this idea of kind of nature as a cure was an interesting one. So looking at the kind of psychedelics as a revealer idea, here's a long quote, so bear with me. "I remember coming into work on a Monday morning and looking out at the 20th story office window over London. I saw a woodland in front of me and with buildings poking out between the trees, where beforehand I'd only noticed buildings and the trees were the background. It was a complete foreground background cognitive switch." So really the idea that psychedelics were a kind of, they allowed this experience to be kind of revealed to them rather than necessarily being immersed in nature and having it kind of increased. Another sub-theme within that was the idea of patterns and structure. It was really quite a common one as well. I came back into my being, the dawn began to break, and every rock, grain of sand, tree branch became reflecting of the patterns that exist within the human body. The idea of nature having a kind of hidden substructure that's not being seen out with the psychedelic experience is quite an interesting idea. And something that bears notice here is the fact that these experiences are very difficult to disentangle from the transpersonal. So becoming one with the universe, hypersense of interconnectedness, these very kind of transpersonal ideas were seeded through psychedelics as an amplifier, psychedelics as a revealer. So it really seems, from our data anyway, that the transpersonal experience is intertwined and almost kind of mediates the idea of psychedelics as an amplifier or a revealer, whichever way someone is inclined to increase their eco-consciousness. Transpersonal experience seems to be there all along. Just a little bit more about transpersonal experiences, if I've got the time. I don't actually have a timer, so someone just stop me if I'm going over. I'm connected to the same fabric of consciousness that pervades all existence. These kind of unitive experiences were commonplace. This feeling of separateness, alienation was shattered by it. I deeply understood that fundamentally there is no separation at all. I think the most common transpersonal theme in this set of data was really the unitive experience. 50% of our respondents cited a specific instance of the unitive experience as within transpersonal experiences as influencing their connection with nature. So it was really pivotal in terms of a theme. Interestingly, people who explained they had a unitive experience that increased their eco-consciousness were twice as likely to have had expressed previous immersion in nature or experience with nature on a deep level before that. So if we were to look at the model that we kind of outlined, really amplifier was the kind of key finding within our data, that psychedelics increase this connection to nature more so than things being revealed, but there's definitely aspects of that as well. Briefly, because I'm not sure how long I've got left, we also asked people about how their connection and concern, or how their relationship with nature really had developed over time, grown more to be more sensitive, attuned to, concerned about nature, was an interesting one. That was a common theme. A lot of people throughout the responses increased connection, increased concern, and connection to. It was overwhelmingly so, but there were a small population within that 5% of our respondents, which something that Dave would have got to had his sound been working. In the previous study, I think it was about 10% of people actually expressed a decreased concern, which something that was quite interesting, and that was something we really wanted to kind of drill down into a little bit here. We had about 5% responses that expressed a decrease in concern, and we really just wanted to know why that might be. So we had a look at their scores on the quantitative data, and they're actually higher than the means. So they felt like they were connected to nature. They felt like they were physically even a part of nature. But how their concern was decreased, it was a bit of a mix. There was some conspiratorial thinking about the narrative of climate change not being the case. There was also some kind of expression of it being a natural process that humankind can make itself extinct. Mother Earth will be fine. And there's also some faith in technology that will solve the problem. So it's kind of an interesting spread of reasons why people felt that concern might be decreased for the future of the planet. So I'm going to wrap up with this final quote. This is an interesting one from there. We're like a parasitic organism that uses the earth as our host, and using the resources isn't as bad as much as it is natural, chaotic, perfectly in line with everything else. I think that's quite scary, but maybe Dave's back. Can you finish, Dave? Hello? No?
Am I back? Share the screen. It's just like,
are you back? Yeah.
On that slide.
Perfect. Yes. And then as soon as you're done with this comment, David, we can jump to the questions.
Yeah, sure. So just wrapping it up. Thanks so much, Alex. I hope you can all hear me now. Better tech. So just like kind of summarizing like what some of the potential benefits there are for this, and not least in enhancing biophilia and eco-consciousness, changing attitudes as well as behaviors, as we've seen, enhancing well-being and enhancing the environment. So all those things kind of ring true and clear. As Sam's pointed out as well, there's a lot of potential benefits in psychedelic psychiatry for mental health as well, or within this ecological crisis, kind of helping people deal with coming to terms with the ecological crisis. And having read Jill Bendel's kind of article, and also there might be a synergistic effect of doing psychedelic assisted psychotherapy in nature, has a kind of turbo effect of the benefits of nature immersion itself, coupled with psychedelic psychotherapy. There's also other avenues as well, such as creative problem solving within ecology and ecological design. Merlin Sheldrake's new book talks about LSD clinical trial we did. He was one of the participants. We're looking at creative problem solving, and he gained some kind of deep insights into his research, looking at the symbiotic/parasitic relationship between a particular species of fungus and some plants. So there's room there for going beyond just the kind of immediate mental health stuff, and just kind of driving increases in interspecies communication, harmony, and reciprocity, which are kind of lessons we can learn from the kind of shamanic engagement and use of psychedelics. And of course, in reducing speciesism, this idea that humans are kind of the most important top of the food chain. And I think we can learn a lot as well from indigenous peoples and their shamanic practices, their use of dietas and relationships to doctor plants and weather manipulation and so on, moving forward into this horrendous ecological crisis. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much to the three of you for that. We already have some questions that came in, so we'll just go directly to that. The first question that came in was from Athena. Sam, you posted something there, but I'll give you the time to answer that now. The question was, do you think we could use psychedelics as a treatment to the environment, to the environmental problems we're facing? Are there any studies that show whether psychedelic users are more environmentally friendly?
So yeah, my view is that psychedelics potentially could be used and could be being better used to not to solve the environmental crisis directly. Like, you know, my background's in ecology, and I'm kind of have a fairly good grasp of the scale of the crisis that we're in and face. And psychedelics aren't going to do the hard work of restoring the biosphere, the increasingly degraded biosphere, but what they can do, if used well, is act as catalysts of connection. And so they can address potentially the growing alienation and disconnection, which is the key underlying driver of the environmental crisis. So they are not a magic bullet or a panacea, but they are a powerful and very useful tool in the box that could be being better used, I think, and hopefully will be as things advance. And yes, there is a very good study. I'll just mention 2017 study. Lifetime experience with classic psychedelics predicts pro-environmental behavior through an increase in nature relatedness by Matthias Forsman and Christina Sagioglu. So that would be a highly recommended and very interesting paper to look into.
I'd like to just add to that quickly if I can, in that, in our study too as well, the survey, which I didn't get to, I presented before at ICPR, there were kind of drastic increases, that self-report of people's changes in behavior as well. So, more than half the sample changed their diet. People, like, as an inspiration from their psychedelic experiences, more than half the sample took up more gardening. About 15% changed their career to something more ecologically orientated as a result of their psychedelic experience. And then we have kind of anecdotal cases as well. So people like Gail Bradbrook, who started Extinction Rebellion, kind of came up with the kind of the process and the kind of keys to social change, as she said, from doing ayahuasca in a bogus ceremony. So, you know, if you can kind of strongly radicalize and inspire an individual who then inspires tens of thousands of other people, that can in itself kind of cascade a lot of change. So I do hold out some hope that psychedelics are at least part of the solution for our current ecological crisis.
Great. I'll just keep skipping to the questions here because we have several coming in. This one, I think all of these, just either person go ahead and answer, but do you think it is possible to develop work with psychedelics for organizations to develop ecological responsibility? And what would that look like?
I would counter initially with a question: why do we need psychedelics in that way to do that? I mean, surely that's the responsibility of humankind more generally, but I think undoubtedly psychedelics would help, but how ethical that would be, I'm not sure.
So there is, I am aware of, there are study plans in the pipeline to look at precisely this, creating or eliciting value change in people, in organizations. One of the arguments that's made against, we talk about in the discussion of our paper, is like, it's all very well the individual changing their views, but what about individuals who hold a lot of power over many other humans? You know, it's like as Huxley talks about, this kind of drop down, this ripple down effect, you know. So yeah, I'm not going to like, I don't want to like speculate too much as to the potential kind of implications of this, but there definitely are study plans that I'm aware of that are sort of in progress now to look at this in greater detail. So hopefully there will be some solid research on this that sort of shed some light on
it. Okay, great. Can you talk about psychedelics being catalysts for social change as well, and for creating new ways of thinking and relating that can help us get out of the mental models we are caught in? And again, posed to all three of you.
Yeah, I'll go for that. I mean, yeah, I think these are potentially catalysts for all kinds of social change on every level. You know, what we're seeing from the research, if you were to sum it up, is that they increase, or they have the potential to, and that they have the tendency and trend of increasing connectivity, both biologically, psychologically, sociologically, ecologically, cosmologically, theologically, right? So on a sociological level and on an ecological level, I think that's quite important as well for the kind of outward-facing world in terms of increasing empathy, reducing authoritarianism, increasing openness to experience and openness to kind of cultural changes and differences. And so I think that they have a lot of potential, I think, for social change. But of course, it's not like you can kind of blanketly distribute them and go, hey, we're going to give these things out for social change, because, you know, it has to be kind of sought by the individuals themselves. It's not like we can just say everybody needs to take these because we need to go bootstrap ourselves into a new paradigm. But I think as you know, in this psychedelic renaissance, as more and more people are taking them, hopefully we're going to move towards, you know, some better kind of systemic changes from the top to the bottom within society. Sam, or Alex, or Angela?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly to add to what David said there, I think one of the interesting potentials of psychedelics at this time in terms of catalyzing change is their potential capacity for generating new ideas and perspectives. And that is something, that is a trait that I think could be immensely valuable for the human species at this specific point in time. We need new ideas and perspectives if we're going to kind of get us out of the increasing mess that we're putting ourselves in. So I think that is part of their power, I think.
I think that's really great. I'd like to add to that. So I think ideas is one thing, but, you know, a lot of ideas have got us in this trouble as well, right? You know, it's like we've got to the point where our intelligence has outstripped our wisdom.
Very much so.
And, you know, there's always the kind of, oh, right, well, technology will save us from the technological mess that we've created and destroyed the environment, right? So that is, you know, I think we have to hold out for that kind of hope as well. But it's also, I think we also need to kind of look backwards as well towards, you know, indigenous cultures and how they interact with their environment. And it's, you know, one thing we're lacking is a sense of respect and reciprocity. You know, that, you know, if you take something from nature, you have to give something back, and it therefore keeps everything in harmony and balance. You know, you don't take more than you need, right? And technology has enabled us to just really just take more than we need, and increasingly, you know, driven by capitalism and this need for perpetual growth on a finite planet. So I think ideas are good, but also I think we need to kind of instill some wisdom in what we're doing. And I think the connection is really important there, about realizing that we're not just, you know, apart from nature, we are a part of nature. We are kind of part of the ecosystem, and what we do really strongly influences our ecosystem.
I wonder if I could just add a little bit to that then, Dave.
Go for it.
Within specifically to do with the survey work we undertook, one of the interesting themes I thought that came up we didn't have time to talk about was the idea of self-harm, and precisely that, through increased connection, that there's a kind of, if I hurt the planet, I hurt myself, like sensibility. And I think that's quite an interesting one, because it seems at first glance perhaps seems kind of almost egotistical to think, well, I don't want to hurt myself, therefore I'm not going to do it. But if that's what drives change on a positive level for the planet, then it's an interesting idea, that increasing connection and becoming part of the bigger kind of biosphere and respecting it, I think it kind of feeds into that as well.
Absolutely. Our youth has appeared, so we must be over time.
I think we just hit our time. Yes, we have time, a little bit more time for one last question. Okay, here we go. I'm going to give it to you guys some quick answers. Last question. Psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers, and arguably nature connectedness could go either way in people who are not particularly nature-minded in the first place. How do you set up the set or to enhance nature connectedness? What do you think will be the effect of increasingly medicalized use of psychedelics in the global north?
So this is an interesting question. Yes, psychedelics certainly act in part by being non-specific amplifiers. I've had chats with this with other psychedelic science colleagues. The non-specific amplifier thing, I'm definitely a fan of it, and I think it's valid. It's not a watertight explain all thing. What about fractals? Where do they come into the non-specific amplifying equation? And they're obviously, fractals are very much part of nature. I don't want to steal the thunder from David here, but he kind of set things in motion here with his initial Ecodelics survey. And of the 150 people that filled in his survey, every single one of them said that their psychedelic experiences had increased their connection to nature. So I would go out on a limb here and say I actually think that the nature connecting potential of the classical psychedelics is perhaps one of their fundamental properties. And I think Albert Hofmann, at the end of his life, came to share that view. So it wouldn't be that. Sorry.
No, I need to cut you off because you are running out of time. I'm sorry. These are short tracks. You have to be concise. I'm sorry to cut you off as well, Angela. Any final closing words?
Thanks, Hughes. I'll catch you for a beer soon, I hope. Next time.
Thanks.
All I have is a bottle of water here.
Thank you.
2 more hours till Angela, you're muted.
Quick closing. If I think Cameron was going to help us by putting up a link here, and if we click into that link, anybody watching, as well as Sam, Alex, and David, that's we can all go in there, and if people still have questions, we can chat in there.
Great.
Cool. Okay, I'm clicking on that now.
Yes, it might be in your emails. We emailed the direct link to all of the speakers. Anyone else can click the link in the Hoover description, but you as speaker should have the link in your email. Thank you very much. I'm going to do a very quick closing. Please remember to select the posters. We'll create a link with the 10 best posters that you can vote for until tomorrow evening. We'll have a short workout session, which was great fun. Actually, the whole team right here did some squats and jump up and down jumps. And I'm going to leave it at that. This is a short time. We're running behind the scenes like you wouldn't believe, guys. It's been lovely to see you, and we'll continue chatting on Hoover.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Well done, you.